Her fingernails came off before her secret did, and the interrogators called that a gentle start. They said queens were untouchable, so they clawed at her ladies instead. The year was 1479, the damp heart of a winter that never seemed to end inside Castile's Alcázar. Queen Beatrice's smile had lately grown suspiciously bright. No husband returns from a frontier war to find his bride humming love songs over embroidery unless another tune has been playing in his absence. King Sancho, pious in public and paranoid in private, demanded proof. Spies produced only whispers. Whispers, however, can topple crowns, so he ordered the whispers beaten into words. The royal confessor suggested restraining the queen herself, but the chancellor reminded him that queens bled nobly while common women simply bled. Reputation, then, required a more circuitous cruelty. Go after the women who undressed her, massaged her scalp with rosemary oil, and carried notes that didn't bear the royal seal. Enter the ladies-in-waiting. Ornaments by day, convenient targets by night. Count Alvar, newly appointed Master of Question, converted an unused wine cellar into what he cheerfully labeled the method chamber. 2 braziers for heat, 3 racks for stretching, and a wooden tub filled with salted water for when silence needed seasoning. He kept bowls of scented petals nearby, not for mercy, but to mask the smell of what salt does to torn skin. Courtiers whispered he named each rack after a virtue: faith, hope, charity, because of course he did. First dragged in was Clara de Sa, 20, and still convinced her father's minor barony guaranteed immunity. It didn't. Faith groaned and creaked until she gasped out the name of a lute player rumored to linger too long beneath the queen's balcony. The king's men raced off, arrested the poor musician, and discovered he'd lost 3 fingers in a smithy accident years before. Hardly the hands to pluck royal heartstrings. King Sancho fumed. Clara returned to hope for a clarification session. She clarified nothing except the limits of human joints. Next came Isolde de Torralba, whose greatest crime had been laughing at the wrong joke in the queen's presence. Alvar opted for charity. Ropes wound, pulleys turned, and cartilage in Isolde's shoulders gave way with a sound many remembered better than their own baptism. She shrieked that Beatrice kept a carved ivory casket beneath her pillows. Soldiers rifled the royal bed and triumphantly produced an empty box lined with silk, exactly the size to hide a small love letter, or, as cynics noted, the king's own missing signet ring. Sancho pocketed the box and ordered Isolde submerged in the brine tub until veracity floats. It never did, but bits of her dignity did, like pale confetti on a crimson wedding floor. Word of the torture fluttered through corridors faster than any lover's note. The queen faced her mirror, saw her attendants replaced by guards, and understood the message: keep silent or watch devotion die screaming. She did what any politically astute woman might. She embroidered. Golden thread formed lilies on a dark velvet mantle, destined for the king's upcoming triumph parade. Each stitch proclaimed loyalty. Each carefully avoided glance at empty maidservant stools betrayed fear. Meanwhile, the court indulged in its favorite sport, speculation. Names were tossed around like festival dice. The Duke of Medina, too old. The Moorish envoy, exotic but risky. A young page boy, scandalously plausible. Every supper conversation became a murder board without the string. The real winner was boredom, which slipped away unseen as everyone stayed up late to gossip misery into sport. Alvar, sensing the crown's patience thinning, brought in the trump card. Sister Inez, a novice nun who doubled as the queen's spiritual confidant. The poor girl believed cassock cloth repelled cruelty. It did not. She was shown faith, hope, charity, and a new device Alvar nicknamed persuasion. leather straps studded with copper nodules warmed over coals until they glowed an unsettling sunset orange. Modern physicians call such temperatures tissue cooking. Alvar called it Tuesday. Inez broke before the first strap cooled, not from pain inflicted, but from pain promised. Between sobs, she named Brother Mateo, the palace librarian with scandalously soft hands and scandalously softer poetry hidden among the scrolls. Guards seized Mateo mid-catalog, discovering only ink stains and a backbone made of apologies. Under torture, he admitted to writing verses praising eyes like dawn over the Tagus, but insisted they celebrated Saint Cecilia, not the Queen. Alvar, disappointed yet determined, tossed him in a cell to marinate in terror while he reconsidered strategy. King Sancho, reading daily reports, grew impatient with his servants' resilience and his torturers' lack of headline results. A monarch could overlook many things: overdue taxes, dishonest counts, but never humiliation. He invited 5 foreign envoys to dine beside the very chamber where the ladies screamed, letting diplomacy hear what disobedience cost. The message resonated. Castile's alliances needed renewing, and fear was cheaper than silver. Back inside Persuasion's orange glow, Alvar experimented with a new angle: psychological cruelty. He paraded prisoners past one another, each forced to watch the next suffer. Clara witnessed Inez's confession and, cracking like sun-baked clay, finally offered a name that made Alvar's eyebrows dance: Sir Rodrigo de Valera, the handsome captain of the Queen's own bodyguard. At last, a candidate with both means and motive, and just enough courtly prestige to make the scandal delicious. Rodrigo initially laughed off the accusation, reminding everyone he was within sword reach of the Queen every sunrise, and perhaps they should arrest the sunrise for proximity as well. Humor survived until Persuasion arrived. Teeth clenched, sinews flexing, Rodrigo lasted long enough to vomit bile and still deny everything. Count Alvar admired the fortitude, then ordered the captain's men one by one onto charity for witness interrogation. Nothing loosens loyalty like listening to a friend forced apart at the elbows. Before dawn, Rodrigo signed a confession, stating he'd kissed the Queen 5 times beneath a tapestry of St. George. His blood blotted the parchment so badly that scholars later argued whether he actually wrote, kissed, or missed. King Sancho, incapable of nuance, chose the former. Yet victory tasted flat. Anyone with eyes knew confessions collected in a torture cellar carry as much truth as a troubadour's resume. Sancho needed spectacle, not certainty. He summoned theologians to declare divine wrath against adulterers and demanded a public penance. The Queen, who still insisted on her innocence, was ordered to walk barefoot around the cathedral cloisters while monks chanted psalms about Jezebel. Snow still clung to cornerstones. Outraged silence clung to her lady's bruised lips. Somewhere between the first and second lap, Beatriz collapsed. Court physicians blamed female frailty, conveniently ignoring that prospects of banishment and burned lovers weigh heavier than snowdrifts. Sancho, suddenly fearful of widowhood, postponed further humiliation and rode to the front lines to inspect fortress repairs, an absence cynics called strategic. In his place, the Chancellor convened a tribunal to finalize earthly punishments while leaving divine judgment to afterlife administrators. The verdict arrived like thunder dressed as parchment. Rodrigo, stripped of rank, would ride through town facing backward on a mule before meeting the headsman. Ladies Clara and Isolde would be branded on their cheeks, 1 fleur-de-lis each, symbol of dishonor. Sister Inez, considered seduced into complicity, was sent to a mountain convent where silence was the only allowed prayer. Brother Mateo, whose poetry indirectly fueled half the frenzy, earned 10 years rowing royal galleys. Proof literacy sometimes sinks faster than stone. The Queen's fate dangled precariously, until a messenger sprinted with news from the Alemanni frontier. Sancho's cousin had died, leaving a contested claim that required immediate diplomatic ballet. Suddenly, Beatrice's public disgrace became political liability. The tribunal pivoted quicker than a maypole dancer, declaring her guilt insufficiently substantiated, and sentencing her instead to a year of veiled seclusion in her privy chambers. A luxurious prison, if one ignored the echo of tortured screams that had paved its marble floor. History textbooks later summarized the event in a footnote. Court scandal, confessions extracted, charges inconclusive, neat, bloodless, and politely forgetful. But anyone visiting the Alcázar's decommissioned wine cellar still sees scorch marks on stone, small semicircles where nails or teeth once bounced, and a single carved word on faith's wooden beam: mercy, gouged by someone who clearly never received it. Evidence rarely stays silent. It just waits for ears willing to listen. And what of Beatrice? Chronicles say she emerged from her veiled year, paler, quieter, yet with eyes that gleamed like steel beneath snow. She resumed embroidery, favoring lilies, stitched so tightly they looked more like barbed wire. When King Sancho returned triumphant from border diplomacy, he found new locks on the queen's apartments and an entourage replaced entirely by stoic older widows. No maidens left to torture, no confidants left to betray. Love, loyalty, and gossip all banned behind doors thicker than any fortress gate. Rumor insists she slept alone the rest of her life. Rumor also insists a cloaked figure visited her chambers every Epiphany Eve, leaving a single white lily on her pillow. Whether that figure limped like a branded courtier, prayed like a repentant nun, or rode like a pardoned poet, no chronicle agrees. Yet the palace guards swore they heard laughter, soft, unmistakably feminine, and tinged with something not quite sorrow, echoing down corridors long after midnight candles gutter snip out. Centuries later, tourists snapped cheerful photos in the Queen's Gallery, unaware their footsteps trace a path laid by women dragged from privilege to pain for sins they perhaps only witnessed. A guide may recount a sanitized anecdote about medieval justice, omitting saltwater tubs and copper-noduled straps because family-friendly tours sell better. But the stones underneath remember. They always do. Their silence is thick, not empty. The kind of hush that follows a scream so loud, it never truly ends. So next time someone sighs that modern scandals feel cruel, recall that in 1479 a lute player's missing fingers proved innocence, a rack named Charity proved irony, and 5 women's shredded lives proved absolutely nothing. Except perhaps this: power prefers confession over truth because truth rarely kneels.